Hare Krishna, welcome back to our 50 years of ISKCON, actually like 55 now. We're coming to the end. This is part number 38, and let me first offer my respects to Srila Prabhupada. Ma'om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Vastaya Bhutade Srimate Bhaktivedanta Samaniti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Vicharne Nivishesha Shunyavadi Bhaskara Devsatarne Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda Vanchika Putarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Veva Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, so here we are. We were discussing the early 2000s in our last talk. That was where we finished. And now we're up to like 2022. And things are really slowing down in my life. So there's not a lot of exciting things to report. As I explained previously, my health took a further dive, after COVID. And arthritic pain was making life more difficult to the point of where just, a little walking or just going out to pick flowers was like a real chore. And, this is part of life. The unfortunate reality that as we age, often our conversations revolve around our bodily situation. And, that can become very boring. I remember, I might have said this before, I remember sitting at the dinner table with my family when I was young and listening to my relatives discussing their various aches and pains. And I remember whispering to my brother, oh gosh, if I ever get to the point where I have nothing else to talk about but this kind of stuff, please kill me. So we made a deal. Yeah, a deal. And we laughed, and yet here we are. And I try to catch myself, from talking so much, what's going on with your health, blah, blah. Change the subject. But it's not easy, naturally friends, they want to fix you. Did you do this treatment? And actually I believe I've bought into so many crazy, things, treatments. I think I have done pretty much all of it. And at some point, just acceptance is necessary. That point, of course, it's very different for everyone. For some, maybe it's not until they're laying on the deathbed, but it's inevitable. Each of us will get old, and most of us will get some disease, and all of us will die. And we say it all the time, but when you get closer, it gets more real. So, although, we all, as we age, we try our best to stay active, but change is inevitable. Change, that's not always an easy thing. It's good to see the signposts that time is running out. And how far have I advanced along this bhakti path? When the body is diminishing, these thoughts, they tend to arise much more frequently. And Anyway, after many unsuccessful attempts to improve my health, various devotees were urging me to get surgery, and I was very resistant, but increasing pain can make you do things you wouldn't ordinarily do. So I finally submitted to at least discuss my situation with a doctor at the Bhaktivedanta Hospital in Mumbai. And he looked at my x-rays and CT scans, and Dr. Giriraj, isn't that so nice to have a doctor named Giriraj? Anyway, he was very frank, and he said, well, I've been doing this for decades, so I know that you have two choices. You can do nothing, and you will be bedridden for the rest of your life soon. Or you can come to the Bhaktivedanta Hospital, and we can do surgeries that will help you. And I knew I had to swallow that brutal truth because I was already almost bedridden, and painkillers were not doing the job. So I am super resistant to hospitals, surgery, and scared of leaving Mayapur at my age and in my condition, and scared to be knocked out with an anesthetic. Is that what you call it? Anesthetic? Yeah. And my mind tends to always go to the worst case scenarios. So I was scaring myself, and I had so much doubt about doing this. I was thinking, well, maybe I should just dwindle away in bed. And I got so mental about this decision that I actually had an astrological prashna done, and that's not something I've maybe done a few times in my life, but I just felt like I needed help. And the astrologer told me that going to Mumbai is going to be very good for you, but there might not be so much improvement in your health. And that was like odd, kind of contradictory, but it was enough for me to finally, surrender. Okay, I'm going to go to the hospital. So in January, I think, of 23, I arranged for someone to stay with my husband, and off I went to Mumbai. And I felt very anxious on that journey. But everything changed the moment I walked into the hospital. It was truly miraculous. I'm telling this story because this is an amazing thing for me. I was nervously entering the hospital, and the first thing that I saw was Srila Prabhupada sitting there on a big Vyasasana, and I heard his voice playing on speakers, and suddenly all my anxiety, it just melted. I felt I was at home, and Srila Prabhupada is here, and everything is okay. I am with family, and that's exactly how I felt the entire time I was there. And I was welcomed by devotee doctors, nurses, many of them with tilak and neck beads on. They're not all devotees, but they're all trained in a service attitude. And believe me, that is not common in India. I can't, maybe I have told some horror stories of my experiences in Indian hospitals. But right after I arrived, Madhavananda Prabhu, who's the head of the whole hospital, he came into my room and he paid obeisances and he welcomed me, and he explained all that I needed to know so gently and kindly. And I think he's the head of a number of other hospitals. It's not just this one hospital they have a number. And so, the point is that he's a very important and very qualified man, from a material level. Yet, I just felt no false ego, nothing, just just a kind and caring devotee. And that is a very unique experience, you know. Generally when someone's in a position and, you know, there's some kind of aura or something of importance around them, but not at all, you know, just. And so soon after I met Dr. Giriraj, who is the most gentle, sincere, humble Vaishnava. And, you know, I just had no doubt at all. I was completely in good hands. And in the days to come, you know, whenever I would meet with Dr. Giriraj, supposedly to discuss my health, but inevitably we would just wind up talking for ages about Prabhupada and other spiritual topics. And then, you know, we'd remember, oh yeah, what about the operation and all that? You know, so it was just so nice. And so before making, you know, a fixed plan of what they were going to do with me, they gave all varieties of tests, and it was just marvelous to be, you know, I was wheeled around, you know, around the hospital, seeing beautiful pictures of deities, and Radha and Krishna on the walls everywhere, and Prabhupada is playing on the speakers throughout the entire hospital, you know, and as you're going by, people are going, Hare Krishna, you know, to you. And then when we were passing through the foyer, I saw a large group of the hospital staff standing in front of Srila Prabhupada's Vyasasana with, you know, folded hands, and someone was reading out some scriptural quote, and this is apparently how the staff starts their day, you know, so pretty unique. And, you know, after many tests, I was told that I needed both hips replaced and both knees replaced and possibly surgery on my back, and you know, that is not going to happen. But, you know, they said, well, one thing at a time. And, you know, so the worst was my right hip, so we made a plan to do that. You know, just the thought of what they do, you know, hacking off a huge bone in your body, it's pretty daunting. But it is a good opportunity to meditate on not being your body. And so, you know, eventually, you know, it was eye-opening to be wheeled into the operating room, you know, which looks like a workshop or, you know, a tool room, you know, all these big saws and knives and yikes, you know. And next came the big needle in my back that was supposed to put me to sleep, but the nurse kept poking me again and again, and it was super painful. And I saw her face getting more and more flushed, and I said, something wrong? And she was like, yes. That's one thing in India, they tell you the truth, you know. And the doctor arrived, and he saw what was happening. Apparently my vertebrae were so tightly compacted that, you know, they couldn't even get a needle between them. So he quickly ordered something else, and I was knocked out in a minute. And, you know, isn't it how strange is consciousness? You know, how it can be manipulated and altered. It's just bizarre. And then I woke up in a recovery room, and I felt anxious because for the first time since I'd been there, I didn't hear Srila Prabhupada. And of course I was very drugged, but I guess I was kept mumbling, Prabhupada, Prabhupada. And finally a nurse realized that the speaker was broken where I was, and so she wheeled my bed a few meters away where I could hear him, and then, you know, everything seemed like okay, everything's okay. And it seemed like it was great for a while. I was back in my room, and it is amazing what drugs can do. I was texting my friends, and I'm feeling like, yeah, that wasn't so bad, ha ha. And that changed after a few hours, especially around 3 in the morning. I woke up and I realized that I had absolutely no ability to move my legs or even feel them. And it was scary. And I immediately texted my doctor, and amazingly, he arrived at the hospital about 20 minutes later. He was at home, and he told me that he doesn't usually look at his phone at night, but he got up to go to the bathroom and he saw my text. And what a sweetheart. He just rushed over, even though, you know, these doctors, they work nonstop for very long hours, day after day. Anyway, he called in other doctors, and eventually they figured out that, you know, it was just a reaction to the anesthesia. I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Anesthesia. And that it would wear off eventually, and, you know, it did. But, and things did go as well as could be expected. We did have one more hiccup. At some point, I had some very severe unexpected pain, and they didn't know what it was, and they couldn't get me even into a wheelchair to take me to x-ray. So they brought a portable x-ray machine to my room, and the man who came to do the x-ray, you know, he was very quick and efficient, and he didn't say anything to me. And when he was done, he turned to look at my Gurunga deity sitting on the table, and he shouted, "Jai Gurunga, Jai Gurunga." And then he did full Dandavats, and then he got up and he came over to me and he put his head on my feet, touched his head to my feet, and then he just scuttled out of the room. And I was just, what? Who are these people? You know, anyway, it was amazing. Anyway, they worked out the problem. It wasn't anything too serious. And of course, I had brought my Gurunga deity with me. No way I was going there anywhere without him. And so he was nicely set up in my room. And he just stole the hearts of many people there. The nurses and other patients, they were coming in to have his darshan and bringing him flowers. It was very, very nice, and honestly, I couldn't have done this without having him with me. You know, we say this prayer, I say it in my puja every morning, Katanchana smrite yasmin duskaram sukaram bhavet vismrite viparitam syad Sri Chaitanya namamitam. That, which means that things that are very difficult to do become easy to execute if somehow or other one simply remembers Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But if one does not remember him, even easy things become difficult. You know, that is so true. So I was so happy that he was with me, although I had to do completely Manasa Puja for a few days. But another wonderful thing that they do daily at this hospital is they have Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra deities on a beautiful altar on wheels, and they push them through the whole hospital into every room, and they allow the patients to offer flowers. It's so beautiful. You know, you're laying there sick or whatever, and then in comes the Lord to see you. It's just a beautiful thing that they do. And another thing that happened while I was there, they held this special yearly festival. And apparently they have many different festivals. I mean, this is a hospital full of festivals. And this one, all the different departments, they prepare food preparations that are from like different parts of India. And everyone takes part, you know, from surgeons to janitors. And everyone is just fired up to do it. And they asked me if I wanted to go, and I didn't really, but you can't say no to such enthusiastic people. So they wheeled me down to the festival place in my pajamas with an old faded chador wrapped around me. And then I see there's all these people there, all nicely dressed up, ladies, and looking all fresh and pious. And all these people were gathered there waiting for me to come and cut the ribbon for the opening of the festival. And I was like, oh my gosh, it was so humbling. So, you know, it's so embarrassing. I'm just like this, a mess. And, you know, so, you know, cut the ribbon. And they're, you know, clicking photos and yelling, "Jai, Jai." It was really amazing. And there was another festival that took place during that time when I was there. I didn't go, I watched it online. But at this festival, a group of village people that live around the Govardhan Eco Village, they come yearly to prepare a huge feast for all the staff of the hospital. You know, apparently there are hundreds of villages around the Eco Village that have benefited from the association of the GEV devotees. GEV, that's Govardhan Eco Village. They go to the villages and they teach how to do organic farming, and how they show how to harvest rainwater, and they give subsidized medical care for all of them. So these people, they love the devotees, and their lives have been enriched by the presence of the devotees. So they come and they put their full hearts into preparing like this huge, wonderful feast in reciprocation. And it's just, you know, this is real preaching. This is bhakti in action. You know, this beautiful reciprocation of loving exchanges, you know. And I'm spending time to talk about this experience because I think it's enlivening for devotees to know about these projects, and I want to glorify these devotees, you know. I didn't manage to go to the Eco Village or Chowpatty or Mira Road, but I believe that many devotees would be extremely encouraged to see the examples being set in these places of loving community cooperation, where the mood of humble service is especially emphasized and encouraged. I mean, I'm sure everything is not perfect, but it's very exemplary. To see that it is possible, it is doable, but it takes vision, leadership, commitment, determination, patience, and time. You know, it is so easy to complain about things we don't like about our institution, but it takes real strength to show an example of how things can be done. That's kind of, it seems to be Radhanath Swami's method, that, you know, he's not a talker, he doesn't promote his projects, he just does it, you know. He shows how it could be different. I really admire that. And, you know, that this concept of a culture of respect, you know, is a core principle of Vaishnavism, you know. It's just, it's not optional. It's not just some archaic, outdated tradition. It's the foundation necessary for the elevation of human society. You know, the Vedic traditions, they're designed to deal with human psychology in ways that uplift and benefit everyone. It's a conscious system for bringing out the best in everyone. You know, the importance of respecting elders and teachers and parents, etc. It's not just sentimental. It's a very practical system for healthy psychological development of the individual. You know, to like give an example, what I mean, you know, often when we're young, there's a tendency to take for granted everything that we have, you know, to not be aware of the gifts we're given daily, just, you know, being alive. The gift of food, of a home, a place to feel comfort and protection. I mean, I sure didn't think about it when I was a kid. I just thought, you know, that's what parents do, and they're supposed to do. I'm owed this. But, you know, the tendency to just, you know, be not grateful, to be, feel entitled or selfish, you know. So this, you know, process of bowing and respecting, it helps to curb that tendency. It helps one cultivate an attitude of gratitude, which is such an important life skill. It's so important for one's psychological development and for success and happiness in life. And, you know, for the person who's being respected, it has the potential to bring out the best in them. You know, when someone shows you respect, well, it can fan the spark within you to be the best version of yourself, to be respectable. It's an opportunity for the elder, the teacher, you know, to bring out the best, you know. And, you know, whereas if you know, when seniors or teachers, when they're not respected, it's likely to have the opposite psychological effect. It will bring out the worst side in them. So there's a purpose behind traditions. Now, often the purpose gets lost over time. They keep doing the tradition, but they don't know why, you know. So, and of course, even the very best of systems, it can become toxic, manipulative, or mechanical if it's not applied properly. Well, history, well, especially Indian history, is filled with stories of people rebelling against prideful or abusive elders, you know, like Brahmins, who hold an, you know, kind of arrogant stranglehold on everyone beneath them and who demand respect. And we've seen this kind of thing in our society. People who take respect, honor, money, facilities, who don't really give proper reciprocation and appreciation in return, which makes that, you know, junior person just, you know, lose trust or feel used or exploited or bitter or resentful. So that, you know, that's there. And we've also seen people who make a show of respect, but, you know, in a false way, like, you know, groveling and, you know, offering praise to someone above them. Yet their intention is just, you know, to rise up in the ranks, you know, to get higher up there themselves. And that, you know, also results in just hypocrisy and a lack of ability to have genuine relationships. So, you know, we know there's surely many things to look out for, many possible red flags to, you know, that would indicate, you know, a culture of respect that's, you know, it's not supposed to be toxic. It's meant to be balanced properly. If it's done right, then it creates the right environment. And to be balanced, it should be clearly understood that although we do place great importance on respecting, guru, elders, brahmins, teachers, but it's not that we only respect those persons and then we're, free to disrespect everybody else. And I have seen this. Unfortunately, it's quite common in India, where the caste system has really corrupted relationships. And such tendencies infiltrate our society, wherein a person's worth is judged entirely upon where they're placed in the hierarchy. And this is the opposite of a culture of respect. But rather it fosters a culture of prejudice. And I've seen this attitude sometimes in younger devotees who are extremely attentive and sometimes even excessively fawning over seniors, but then they're just dismissive or disrespectful or even unkind to other devotees. So that is not a Vaishnava culture of respect. Vaishnavas are meant to be respectful to all living entities. And of course, that respect is offered in different ways to different people, but it's essential to cultivate that attitude even if we don't feel like it, because that's what it is to be a Vaishnava, that we're aspiring to become. Sometimes we might withhold respect because we think, the other person's just not worthy of being respected. And it's true, there are many elders or teachers, who behave in ways that they're not worthy of respect. However, there's no harm in showing respect for anyone. It gives them a chance to do better. But because everyone is part of our Lord and everyone is loved by Him. And, there really are no scriptural injunctions that warn us about offering too much respect. But there are many, many warnings about being ungrateful or disrespectful or critical, And in fact, we often don't really know who even is worthy of respect. Sometimes the most advanced souls are not the elders or gurus. They might be a child or a housewife or a completely unknown devotee. So over the years, I've come to see how, people rise and fall. The great soul today might be the fallen one tomorrow. The unknown devotee today may rise to a prominent position tomorrow. We really don't know the heart of others. And for sure there are many hidden saints, and we should try to keep a lookout for them, to be personal, to look at people, to really look, not just make assumptions based on position. And the Shastras are filled with stories of saints that nobody knew about. Like there's a story of Suklambar Brahmachari. It seems like nobody knew. They thought he was just this poor beggar, and no one recognized him as an exalted devotee. And then, the story unfolds, and Lord Chaitanya reveals to everyone how incredibly dear Suklambar Brahmachari is to his heart. And in that section, Vrindavan Das Thakur says, who can recognize a devotee of Lord Chaitanya other than the person who has received the mercy of Lord Chaitanya? So we need the mercy to just see. So it's something, to consider carefully. We are actually given eyes to see. Om Ajnanat Mirandasya. We say it every day. Otherwise, we're blind. So we shouldn't be too quick, to judge the position of anyone. And being respectful to all, it's a safe position. It's safe. But although there may be many reasons to have some cynicism about a culture of respect, there is no doubt that developing communities and relationships built on genuine care and respect are absolutely essential for the growth of any society. And, so we need to learn how to do it right. And it's not easy. It seems that Radhanaswami had this very clearly in mind from the onset of the development of his projects. Creating this focus of people before projects. And, very positive results are visible. So that's encouraging. That's why I'm spending time to talk about what I experienced there. But, despite the success of these projects, there are those who criticize Radhanaswami for opening hospitals. That Srila Prabhupada doesn't like it, that's like what the Mayavadis do, and blah, blah, blah. But the people who say these things, it's true that Prabhupada said certain things, but why? You have to understand them. The people who say these things must not have gone to the Bhaktivedanta hospital, because it is no ordinary mundane hospital. It's filled with intentions and activities for promoting bhakti. And people become purified just coming to that hospital. And everyone that works there is trained that they're supposed to serve the body, the mind, and the soul of every patient. And they have practical systems to make that actually happen. It is a remarkable accomplishment. So I'm very happy I went there. It was an uplifting and a purifying experience. And let me just take a sip of water. So it wasn't an easy journey flying back home, but I was glad I went there. And it does take time to heal after that sort of thing, and it did relieve a significant amount of particular pain, and it did give me a bit more mobility. But eventually I came to understand how that Prashna was right. It was definitely a good experience in Mumbai, but my health situation was not going to dramatically improve. I still had the other hip, both knees, the back, and, fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue and blah, blah, blah. So it was just time for me to accept that I'm at the next stage of life. Old age and disease, they have arrived. And these are signs that the final stage is not so far off. Now, nowadays, the modern narrative, it tells us we should try hard to stay young, and there are billion-dollar industries to help people do that. And many, tout these popular phrases that, you're only as old as you feel, and age is just a number. And of course, there's some truth to that. And there's certainly lifestyles and habits and emotional awareness that can help us. And we really can try our best to do the right things. But it is inevitable that old age and or disease will attack us all at some point. Of course, this will come in very different ways and at different times for each of us. Some people will maybe, be flying in their service and physically active till they're, 99 or 100 years old. It's possible, but that was not my reality. For me, it was clear now that I have arrived at a different stage of life. Things are changing and there's no going back. And when that becomes clear, then, we have to try to embrace a new stage of life in the way that we have embraced the other stages of life that we've gone through. When you become book distributor, you learn how to do it, or when you become a pujari, or when you become married, or when you have children, and you work on it, you figure out what you're supposed to do now at this time. So, this is it, but it's a hard one to accept, and we might try to resist it or deny it or be upset about it, or we might just keep on endlessly searching for treatments that will turn the clock back, so we can just keep things going as I'm accustomed to doing them. But, for most people, for many people, acceptance, however difficult, is generally the best way forward. I mean, that doesn't mean defeat. It just means recognizing that, every stage of life is important, and it is uniquely designed for each individual to teach us what we need to learn at that time of life. So we need to accept that Krishna is teaching me something. We might not know what, but something. And we don't all get the same lessons, and the challenge is to understand the lessons and hopefully pass the tests. And, there are various reasons why this, different stages of life, you have different types of challenges. And, so this, one of the challenges is that it just feels so unnatural because it is. We are by nature eternally youthful. And no matter how wrinkled and unfamiliar the face in the mirror looks, or how bad the body feels, there's still that familiar feeling inside that is constant, that feels young and unchanging. I recently read something, I copied it, that a Christian lady wrote, because, it just shows the same thing. So here, I have it here. She says, I asked an elderly lady once what it was like to be old and to know that the majority of her life was now behind her. She told me that she has been the same age her entire life. She said the voice inside of her head had never aged. She has always been the same girl. She had always wondered when she would grow up and be an old woman. She said she watched her body age and her faculties dull, but the person she is inside never got tired. She never aged. She never changed. So then, she concluded, remember, our spirits are eternal. Our souls are forever. So the next time you encounter an elderly person, look at them and know they are still a child, just as you are still a child. And children will always need love, attention, and purpose. Well, that was pretty good. This is a Christian lady. This is right on the mark. But another thing about this stage of life, it's kind of a shock, because for most of our lives, we're just moving, full steam ahead forward, striving for various goals, and we're busy planning, executing, thinking of the next thing that needs to be done, to build our lives, our service, our families, our institution. There's always this forward motion, looking ahead, as if we'll eventually reach some permanent place of success or security. And then decades just fly by, immersed in this forward rush with a burning sense of life purpose. And we're on a mission. And then suddenly you're hit in the face with illness or old age, and it's like you're standing before a giant stop sign. Halt! Where are you going? What is your focus now? What are you supposed to be doing? And your story is coming to the final chapters now. How is this story going to end? And, it's not meant to sound depressing. It's just natural. When you're on a journey, any journey, sometimes you need to stop and look at the map. No, actually, people don't look at maps anymore, right? They look at the GPS settings. But what's the right direction to head in? Some readjustment might be necessary, So, this time of life, it's also can be scary because you see that everything familiar, all the familiar things are, kind of gradually being eliminated from your life, like it or not. I was remembering that when I was a kid, we used to play a game called elimination tag, and where we'd throw the ball at the other team, and whoever got hit was out of the game. And that's kind of what this stage of life feels like. There's, this process of elimination happening, Again, there's another Christian quote that, just popped up on my screen. It's interesting when I start thinking about certain things, it seems like Krishna sends relevant quotes and stuff that seem to pop up. You don't know why. But this was some Christian person put, talking about elimination. And I have that copied here. I'll read it. And she says, at 60, the workplace eliminates you. I mean, the ages might not be exact, but anyway. At 60, the workplace eliminates you. No matter how successful or powerful you were doing your career, you'll return to being an ordinary person, and you cannot cling to the mindset and sense of superiority from your past job. Let go of your ego. And at 70, society gradually eliminates you. The friends and colleagues you used to meet and socialize with become fewer, and hardly anyone recognizes you at your former workplace. And don't say, I used to be, or I was once, because the younger generation won't know you, and you mustn't feel uncomfortable about it. Then at 80, family slowly eliminates you. Even if you have, many children or grandchildren, most of the time you'll be either by yourself or with your spouse. And when your children visit occasionally, it's an expression of affection. So don't blame them for coming less often, as they're busy with their own lives. And at 90, the earth wants to eliminate you. Some of the people you knew have already departed forever. At this point, don't be sad or mournful, because this is the way of life, and everyone will eventually follow this path. Remember, the only thing that won't eliminate you eternally is God. Because at the end of our journey here on earth, we shall all return to Him with accounts of how we lived our lives. That was a pretty good description. I thought it was relevant. But, simply put, it's time to stop rushing forward and to stand in place and to start letting go. And, you know, now I understand better, really, the logic of the 4 stages of life, of how they're designed in a way that, you know, you're gradually moving towards detachment, knowing that that's necessary. It's very different from, you know, modern way of thinking, you know, that there's acceptance that detachment is necessary gradually throughout life. And, you know, because it's just undeniable that everything is changing physically, psychologically, socially, spiritually. And acceptance of that, that's important. I know it's not everyone's experience. But I know that my experiences are common to many other older people. Although the things I'm talking about, these stages, they arrive at different times for different people in different ways. So I'm just sharing things that I've experienced and that are common to many at this stage of life. So, you know, of course, the physical changes are the most obvious. You look in the mirror and wonder, well, when did this happen? But it's not just about how you look, it's how you feel. You know, I mean, for myself, energy levels, you know, really plummeting to the point where even small things I have to consider. You know, can I manage to even walk through the temple and make it back, you know? And, you know, so it means we are often forced to spend, you know, much more time at home and hopefully not cut off, but, you know, becoming more of an observer than, you know, being, you know, really out in the playing field. And of course, that's not true for everyone, but it's a reality for a lot of us. And it can feel like, you know, oh my God, my life is becoming smaller and smaller, like the world is shrunk. And, you know, even the sadhana schedule, things I've done a certain way for, you know, half a century, you know, have to make adjustments there. And, you know, and gradually having to let go of all the services that I've done for, you know, decades, and not being able to travel as I did my whole life, you know. So, you know, these are the very common physical changes that older people just have to adjust to. and naturally there's psychological changes. For me, most of it's kind of positive, you know, where many things just don't seem so important anymore, you know, especially things regarding the institution, especially because what can I do about it anyway at this stage of life? And not that you don't care, but, you know, you care, but it's more important is what's going on a personal level. And, you know, there's just less need to try to fix everything. Yeah, it's a common saying, when you're in your 20s, you want to change the world, which was really true. And in your 30s, you want to change your family, which can be very true too. And, you know, in your 40s, you want to change your community. And then in your 50s and beyond, well, you will be happy if you can just change yourself. And that is quite true. So, you know, at this time, there's, you know, more time in reflection than on judging others, and more just searching for our own genuine realizations beyond just what I've been told or what I've memorized. And, you know, there just is less interest in all the issues that people like to argue about, that, you know, they often seem very petty and ego-driven. And, you know, nowadays I just would prefer to ignore or withdraw energy from, you know, the many controversial things going on, you know, not try to fight them. It's just much more apparent now that life's problems and dilemmas and difficulties, they're just not going to be resolved by negativity and attack and criticism, or by force, or by just endless talking. I'm tired of talking, or posting online. Now I just feel, the best resolution is just to try to be a better devotee myself. That's a big job. And it just feels okay that I just don't have to know everything, and I don't have to be certain about everything. There's just less need to prove anything or get validation. And, the much more alone time, it's okay, because, introversion, it seems important now. Not isolation, that's not what I mean, but a natural time of contemplation that's needed to unpack all that life has given and taken so far. And, social life, that also really changes. Oh gosh, it's already almost an hour. Your social life, how that changes, wherever you go to places and people are always, how are you? You look pretty good. Are you better now? And they want to fix you. And it just becomes, oh gosh. You just say, yeah, I'm fine. Because people are not going to understand what you're going through. And they don't really want to. And, it's natural. It's not bad. But, sometimes it just feels easier to stay at home, watch online, easier to focus. And, the things that inspire me maybe in the past, they don't, continue to nourish me in the same way. I know personally I've become more sensitive to, and even averse to, like being in crowds and loud music and, boisterous shouting speeches, booming speakers. I don't have much tolerance for those, and I see my friends also. So, at this stage you kind of prefer understimulation. So things, that nourish, they might be a lot smaller and simpler and more intimate. And also the circle of friends, that may also become much smaller, but more intimate. And, sometimes you may feel like a foreigner in a world that's just moving at a very different pace and is just driven by different concerns. Sometimes I watch a temple program online and I see, oh my God, I don't even know anybody there anymore. Wow, there's only 2 Prabhupada disciples there. It can feel like you're, a dinosaur from a previous yuga, but it's okay. That's life. The way people see you, that also changes. Who really sees old people? They're kind of invisible, and even they can be seen as inconvenient or irrelevant or out of touch or even a burden. And it's okay. The world turns, the next generation moves forward, so anyway, most of these changes are good. They can be beneficial for our spiritual life, but there are other changes that we can be confronted with, and I've seen it, I've experienced many things myself that are really not positive, that are traps of this time of life. Like every stage of life, it has its varieties of traps that you can easily fall into that will be damaging for a spiritual life. One of the things first is avoidance or just resistance of what's happening to ourselves. And we just do not want to apply ourselves to what this stage of life is challenging us to do. So we may be just stubborn and lazy. And but it's good to explore the feelings of resistance you know, what is it that holds us back? You know, to think about that deeply. Or, you know, another trap is that we just want to escape from it all. I just don't want to think about it. You know, because being truly conscious all the time is not easy. You know, sometimes we'd rather hide even from ourselves. We would rather shut down, turn off, and there are hundreds of ways we can distract ourselves. Endless. Scrolling on the internet, eating, sleeping, Netflix. There's just unlimited ways to divert our attention from the work at hand. And we all know it's not good, but it's so easy to fall into these traps. We have to just keep trying. You know, or some, I've seen many that really wallow in disappointment. You know, it can feel, you know, easier to just pity ourselves or drown ourselves in feelings of failure, how, you know, we haven't done enough, or we've not been good enough, or we haven't made enough advancement, and we can just beat ourselves up for not serving Srila Prabhupada enough, or not being a good enough disciple. And, you know, we can burn ourselves up with feelings of guilt or failure. And that can lead, you know, if you don't get out of that, it can lead further into falling further into the comparison trap, you know, where you start looking at everybody else, you know. Oh, look at my God brothers and God sisters, they're the same age as me, and they're not slowing down, and they're doing so many service, and some of them are even doing more and more, and that is true, and possibly many devotees will continue like that until their last breaths. And it's hard not to be jealous of them. You know, why can't I be like them? You know, what am I doing for Lord Chaitanya? But, you know, this kind of lamentation, it has to be recognized as really tamaguna, and it's not humility, it's envy, and it is disappointed arrogance. Meaning, like, I want to be better than I am, and I'm not, so I'm just going to lament about it. But, you know, we can only do our own journey. We can only be who we are. We are all starting at different places, and we're on different journeys. And we cannot play someone else's part. We have to be where we are. Otherwise, you know, comparison, that is a thief of joy. And we will make ourselves miserable thinking along those lines. And, you know, another trap is, you know, again, another, you know, kind of tamaguna, loneliness and sadness. Especially when you're debilitated by disease or, you know, different ways of deterioration. Because it's a fact. Friends, family, you know, drift apart. You know, as Prabhupada was always telling us, we're like pieces of straw that come together in the river, and then we just drift apart. And, you know, it can feel lonely even when we're surrounded by people. We can be in the middle of a crowded room and just feel alone and unseen and no connection. And, you know, the changing face of the world, of the institution, it can make you feel like a foreigner in an unfamiliar place. But, you know, these kind of natural feelings, but, you know, they have to be checked. Or we will start to just feel like we're just fading, disappearing into the background, and, you know, you just become a shadow of your former self. It is a downward spiral it's not uncommon in elders, and amongst devotees it is there. And it's true that we might be alone more, but we don't have to feel lonely. Surprisingly, they say the cure for loneliness is actually solitude. To learn a new ability to be alone and to be happy alone. And if we can learn to embrace aloneness, it'll help us to stop chasing after crumbs of affection, seeking like a scrap of validation from others, desperately hoping that we still have some value and that we're still appreciated. It's really a mistake to succumb to that kind of emotional hunger that seeks to be fed. That our value does not hinge on the recognition of others or what we've done in the past. Our value lies in our relationship with Guru and Gauranga. And of course, deeper chanting and good association can help us to feel that more. And nowadays we have just so many opportunities to do that, But still, despite all the opportunities, it's still easy to be complacent and bored and just want to be comfortable. Oh God, that's me, just lay back on the recliner and surrender to comfort. And but we know that's a mistake. Recently I saw a really, really nice interview with Charu from Utah. It was on the Namaras podcast, and he and his wife Vaibhavi, they are just a super dynamic devotees who continue to do astounding service. And he's older than me, and he's so energetic and fired up and truly an inspiration. And he was talking about this danger of getting comfortable. And surely anyone who's grown in any way, mentally, physically, or spiritually, knows very well that growth is not found in comfort. And that is really not easy when you're ill. But we just have to do our best with where we are. Keep trying. What else can we do? And fear, that's another trap that can just paralyze us, because illness can be scary. What's going to happen next? How am I going to cope with more pain? What if I lose my mind? What if? It can be an endless state of fear. And that fear, it will distract us from having the ability to be present and to explore the growth potential of our situation, to learn the lesson that Krishna is sending us. And, of course, the ultimate fears of death, and maybe even more so, the path I'll have to walk to get there, how long or how difficulty that journey is going to be. And, more scary even, what's my next destination? Where am I going all alone? And, people in general, they avoid talk of death. They think it's morbid. And it's funny because they know they have to prepare, like when they're going to go to school, and they have to prepare for their careers, prepare for their marriage, or prepare for retirement. But let's not talk about preparing for death. There's a famous, relevant quote. It's that life asked death. It was like a cartoon. Life is asking death, why do people love me and hate you? And death replies, because you're a beautiful lie and I'm a painful truth. So, it's supposed to be opposite for devotees. That A devotee's whole life is meant to be preparation for death and to utilize the human form of life for its highest purpose. And so we know it's better to think about it. It helps bring clarity about what's important. It helps us prioritize. It puts things in perspective, and it promotes a sense of urgency. And it's humbling that soon we will bow down to this irresistible force. And it makes us realize how important the time we have left is. But we know Krishna is kind and he will help, and we just have to try our best. I remember Gauri, my god sister, who died many years ago from cancer, and she was telling me, she said that now my prayer is, I don't care whether I'm going back to the spiritual world. I want to be free from material desires. I want to be pure so that I can actually serve you. I want to become your instrument, and I want to chant your holy names 24 hours. And I just want to love you. And I thought that was quite beautiful. That was, not long before she left, and she said that this should be our constant concern. And she warned, she said, don't wait till you think, don't wait to think about this until you find out you've got 4th stage terminal cancer. And, so things need to be, adjusted. Recently, an astrologer, he told me, he said, it's important at this stage of life to begin to consciously observe how the subtle body tends to grasp very tightly to the material body and the material identity. And he said it's a good exercise to endeavor to consciously lessen that grip, to release that tight hold. It's a kind of yoga practice, to loosen those ties, like peeling back layer upon layer of conditioning, making it easier to depart this world when you're less, tied up and holding on, rather than holding on tight and being forcefully ripped out of the body, And it's actually what we do. Every morning we begin our puja, the first meditation. Naham vipro nacha narapatir napi vaisho nashudro nambani. I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not, a woman, a man, a Vaishya, Shudra, I am Gopi Bharatu Padakamalayo, Dasa Dasa Nadasa. So this is what you're doing, when we do that, Apparently there are other, I'm kind of interested, other elaborate forms of that. It's called Bhuta Shuddhi, ways to do this, But anyway, Prabhupada said, a devotee may apparently grow old, but he's not subjected to the symptoms of defeat experienced by a common man in old age. So consequently, old age does not make a devotee fearful of death, as a common man is fearful of death. Thus, instead of depressing a devotee, advanced age helps him become fearless and thus happy. So something that we can aspire towards, actually having that experience as a lived experience, that understanding. This is what Srila Prabhupada says we should feel at this stage. And, that all of the changes, all of the challenges, that we need to see that they're gifts from Krishna to stop us in our tracks, that we will sit with ourselves to look at what needs to be done to reach our highest potential. And Krishna is helping us by taking away beauty and health and friends and service and abilities, and then you're left with nothing, so that you turn fully to Him. It may feel like we're just losing everything, and that is not a bad thing. As I like the song of Bob Dylan long ago. He used to say, when you ain't got nothing, you got nothing to lose. And you're invisible now. You've got no secrets to conceal. How does it feel to be on your own? He was clever. So there's a lot of freedom in losing everything. Not that everyone does, some people, Krishna is giving them more and more and more, completely different experience. But, ultimately, everyone is going to leave everything behind in one way or another. I mean, sometimes people, they just see this old age stage. It's as a time when you're just not doing much. It's just dealing with health issues and a physical life. But that's really not so. It's a new kind of work that's required. And there is productivity, but it's of a different quality. And it might not look like work, but it might be the most important work we have to do in our life. It might look like you're falling, but it can largely be experienced as a falling upward and onward into a broader and deeper world, into deeper sadhana, deeper understanding, greater love, if we can apply ourselves properly. And it's a work that nobody can do for you. Your friends and your guides, they can help or support us in various ways, but this inner world, you're there alone, and nobody can do it. But illness can be a great help, because the world is a place of suffering, and we need some kind of impetus to get out of it. And illness, it really pushes us, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj has written extensively about this, about the, what we can learn from illness. I don't know what, one of his beggar books, and also Pranada and Archana Siddhi have written a very brilliant book called When Illness Takes Hold, and they share their deep realizations about the blessings and the challenges of illness. I really recommend this. Maybe I can put it up on the, get a link for it. Because, illness, it demands us to become more patient, more thoughtful, more prayerful. It really forces detachment from the body. And when life comes to, nearly a standstill, there's just no escaping from ourselves. We can't hide behind being busy. When we can no longer physically engage with the world like other people, we're forced to come face to face with ourselves and all of our anarthas. And it's a good thing. It might not be fun or pleasant, might even be super painful, but it helps us to dismantle the false ego, because that has to happen. That is what's going on, especially at this stage, that the real work we're doing now is finding our authentic self. And that's a very popular modern theme. Now, when they talk about it, it's more about being honest and genuine and whatever. But what we mean in Krishna consciousness, that's something far, far greater. It means to get rid of all upadhis, all false designations, to get free of anarthas that keep us from seeing ourselves and the spiritual realm. It means to surpass, false identifications with the body, the senses, the mind, the emotions, the intelligence, and to finally reach the soul, to find my authentic self. That's the ultimate journey. And that ultimate journey, it's not an easy one. We might have to trudge through all sorts of difficult terrain. It requires work, and not the kind of busy work we've done all our lives. It's not visible to the eye. It could be the hardest work we've ever done. Some refer to this as shadow work, meaning exploring internal and possibly uncomfortable truths. As Vaishnavas, we may mean shadow work in our terms as anartha nivriti. And it often is about what we refuse to see about ourselves and what we don't want others to see. That we have to get rid of the masks that we wear. The body and mind itself are masks that have to be stripped away. So for so long, our identity has been rooted in the externals of Krishna consciousness. At least not everyone, but many times that's the case. It's been rooted in what service we do. What have I done for 40 or 50 years? And that is tied to our value. I am what I do. So if I'm not a pujari or a musician or a mother or a wife, then, what am I? What is my usefulness? What value do I have now? It's sort of like becoming naked, like however uncomfortable it may be. Actually, many people say the same thing in front of Srila Prabhupada. We felt naked because Prabhupada was penetrating through all those layers and touching our soul. So it's important work of being brutally honest with oneself. And sometimes devotees avoid this kind of reflection because, we're busy, we're serving, we're chanting, and, we're, other people see as me as advanced, and, so what is the need, And, that might be so in some cases, but if the inner and the outer life are not in sync, eventually problems will leak out. And that's likely the reason that, after many years, you see somebody, somebody, you might practice for over 50 years and then suddenly desire to marry when you're, over 80 years old. I don't mean this as a criticism, but simply to shed some light on the difficulties that arise when we do not do the internal work and we're not fully honest. This is described in I have a quote here from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati that's very relevant, poetic, and beautiful about this point. And let me see. I think, it is Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. So here's his quote. He says, "After coming to the bank of the celestial river to collect water, I turned away and headed towards the desert. Even after I discovered a mine of precious jewels, I again became allured by a glass shop glittering with imitation jewels. What a piteous disaster. Those who are alert and intelligent should be totally determined to live a life of complete surrender to the lotus feet of Srila Gurudev, devoid of duplicity and any type of separate interest, lest they shall certainly be deprived." Very beautiful. So, the more that we've cultivated and protected a particular persona in our life, the more difficult it is to do this kind of work, especially when someone's been in, an idealized role like teacher, leader, guru, president. It can trap us in lifelong delusion. It can make us hypocrites or masters of denial. But, through proper introspection, we can realize we no longer need to be falsely propped up by the externals or by group approval. When there's no longer any persona to protect or project, we can finally be who we are without disguise or fear. And advancement means we don't have to protect or promote any self-image. We know I am a servant of the servant of the servant of the servant, and that's my identity. And hopefully, if we're trying to do this work, we'll see some changes in our spiritual practice or in our realizations, in our relationships. We'll greater attentiveness to hearing and chanting, and just becoming more prayerful from minute to minute, and looking for the messages that Krishna is sending you, and deeper self-appraisal, examination of what is my actual state of advancement, and we'll examine what is happening in my heart rather than what am I doing, what is my experience, and what am I feeling when I chant. And these are all such important things. In earlier days, we may have thought we were like diving deep in the ocean of spirituality, and now we may see that really I've been barely skimming the surface. And yesterday I read Kavi Chandra Maharaj in his Vyasa Puja. He said, at one point I thought I was a devotee, and sometimes even thinking I was a good devotee. And then I thought, well, I was trying to be a devotee. And now I wonder if I'm even trying to be a devotee. So this is the evolution of realizations. That we may see that the concepts and ideas and philosophical truths we have, been mouthing for a lifetime, we see sometimes that they come from the mind to the mouth, but there's a strong need for it to go from the heart, and that could be a long journey, but it's essential. Just the need for purification just becomes more urgent. And ultimately, all that really matters is, well, how much do I love Krishna? And I know you can become so tired of theoretical talk, because this awareness that, there's just nothing that speaks louder than just purity. We would see how Prabhupada would just lift everyone up in a room just by coming in, solve problems and make everyone happy because of his heart. And that is our greatest need, that we can rise above anartha nivritti, and that there's more and more. I feel I can only pray, that nothing changes until we change. And I know that I have such a long way to go. We know we have everything. We know nothing is lacking. But we do have to appreciate and go deeper into what we've already been given. And, ultimately, nothing much seems to matter other than, have I realized my true self? Do I feel Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma? And until I experience this, I am still part of the problem. So, we have only arrived at our authentic self when we know Gopi Bharatu Padakamalayor Dasu Dasanu Das. And again, I'm not sure if it was Bhaktivinoda Thakur or Srila Bhaktisiddhanta that explains how, I cut out a quote sometime and I don't know where it came from, how we arrive at our authentic self. This is a quote. As soon as the anarthas are removed by chanting the holy names, the form, qualities, and pastimes of the Supreme Lord will automatically manifest. One who chants the holy name awakens his spiritual form, while the distinction between his material body and his spiritual self is gradually realized. When one attains self-realization and continues to chant the holy names, one will immediately perceive the transcendental form of the Supreme Lord Krishna. So, something to look forward to, maybe many lifetimes in the future. So, we are on the ultimate journey to our authentic self. And some of us may be close to the finish line, and some of us may have a long way to go. But it is the most blessed journey that exists. And if we stay on the path, we have so much to look forward to. And again, I got very carried away, and I realized that this is way too long, and I hope it's not been too intense or boring. But, these talks are not really meant to just be entertainment. So I will end here. And I've more or less completed. I'm done with what's been happening with me up to this point. But to finish the series, I still want to do 1 or 2 more talks. Some thoughts about Srila Prabhupada and about the future. So I'm not quite done yet. So hopefully I'll see you in the next talk. Hare Krishna.